I've got it.
There it goes.
Here we go, we're good.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
It goes automatically.
All set?
Roll, you can call the order.
Okay, let's rock and roll. This is the September 28th, 2021 meeting of the Lewes Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Council. I'm Don Long, the chair, and all the members of the committee are present tonight or on Zoom. Hi, Bob. We'll start with announcements. Going to come to you, Janet, after I do the other announcements and talk about the grants. We last met on June 1st. We completed the map about the same time as our last meeting. There have been some improvements. One of the things that we changed from input from the public was that we changed Cedar Street to a use caution when cycling route versus, I think before it was a cycle-friendly road and trail. And I think for folks that live over there or drive or cycle that street, and I don't very frequently, they shared some concerns about that. So that was one of the major changes. I think it's more clear now. It has some doesn't feel quite as cluttered as the last map. So we're happy to get this done. And I understand, Chip, you said you've already given out about 6,000 of them, or about over half of them. Okay. So 10,000 used to last 2 years. Now it's lasting, it sounds like 1 year. We had 3 sponsors again for the map. There's 2 bike shops in town, plus the chamber. The chamber and the 2 bike shops each received 2 boxes of maps. And I assume, Chip, you're checking in with them once in a while to see if they need additional maps.
I haven't in a while, but I can, yes.
Fantastic. Let's see, other announcements. I believe at the last meeting, we were talking about, we had ordered signs for the fix-it stations. And I believe it's with Janet and the city staff. Those fix-it stations signs were installed. It includes a sign that shows bike tools, and then also a sign that shows an air pump. One of the fix-it stations is at the Gills Neck Road, Savannah Road Bike Corral, and the other fix-it station is at the Lewes Library Trailhead. If you haven't seen a fix-it station, it's pretty cool. It's got all the tools that are tethered. It's got a built-in bike pump. And it also is a bike stand. You can lift your bike up and set it up on the thing. So it's pretty cool. If you ever need to work on your bike, it's a great place to go to work on your bike. I've done that a few times.
Yeah, we'll discuss whether there was a regular routine or going around and checking. Is some of that's not happening?
I check them,
Okay.
and I know that we have asked the city streets staff to check them out once in a while too, but there's nothing regular. And it could be on someone's schedule, say every 3 months, to just run by and make sure the pump. Usually it's the pump. The pump connection that gets, someone steps on it, it just goes, it gets malfunction or starts to malfunction and has to be replaced. So I think the pump's used more than the tools are. That's what
May I ask a question? Sure. A question about the brochure.
Sure.
I noticed that the map shows the route going what appears to be through. Well, I'm not sure what it's saying, but the Children's Beach House. Is the idea that the route would actually go through their parking lot, or is that actually suggesting that?
I think
what is that suggesting?
that's an area we could correct. It's actually incorrect the way it's.
Their parking lot is actually Cedar Avenue. They had a problem with that when they were trying to do a preschool. That Cedar Avenue, in reality, they had blocked it off, runs through their parking lot. The Bay, you mean?
You mean Bay Avenue? Do we have permission to actually use that as the bike route?
No, they have it all blocked off. So
Right, that's what I thought.
That's a great observation. Thanks. I'll make a note of that for next year's map.
breakdown.
On the map, anyone else have any comments on some of the changes we've made to the map or suggestions for next year? Yes. I wondered if going to digital at some point would be the right move to make. But I see in the lobby, there's still tons of other paper brochures, so we're still sort of in the paper age, I guess, as far as.
Well, tourists really wouldn't know enough to download it.
Mhm.
So you really need some maps out on the street somewhere, you know.
Well, we have a QR code reader at the ferry, so folks coming off the ferry can put their phone up and they can download this as a PDF. But I guess I'm thinking about the expense and the paper that's involved. I mean, this is a.
I agree 100% with you.
I wonder if the bike shops have it attached as a download on their websites also, maybe would be a good resource. So as they rent someone a bike, they could direct them to the site to get that from there rather than handing out a paper map.
That's a great idea.
That's a good idea.
Could you print it on cheaper paper too? I mean, does it have to be just stock and glossy, you know, could it be on more of a plain paper?
Yeah, I guess it could be. I don't know how it would look non-glossy.
I think you would want to have some paper that would stand up to being folded frequently and possibly also to the occasion that you're biking and it rains.
Mhm.
I think this would be resistant to deterioration. But I agree, yeah, I like the idea.
To take that a step further, but I know they're expensive, is to develop an app.
Yeah.
The ideal thing would be to have it on the phone, but you could do something still through a website on your phone. But apps are, I think, fairly costly to develop.
You have to pay for it on the city website. You have to get into the committee, our committee, and then scroll to the bottom to find the hyperlink for the map. So yeah, it's not as easy.
Well, these ones, if you download a bicycle map just for bicycling, chances are these will be on the app that would have it already, right? I mean, just like if you go to Google for cars and all, you can get.
I don't know if it has this specific information as far as the bicycle friendly route, so. We'd have to
But
look
some of
into
those
that.
maps you can buy specifically for bicycles, and it will tell you routes that are better for bicycles.
Could you send me, if you know of one of those, could you send that to me so I can review
Yeah,
it?
I'll try to find it. I mean, I don't personally use one, but you have the bike computers, you can download a map for biking, you know, I mean, and usually it tells you, like, if you have an RV, it tells you what roads you can get under bridges and where you can't, you know.
What I'd like to see is fleshing this idea out, and then by next May, when we typically would print this map, to have either a new concept developed by then, or just go with this again. So we'll have about 6 months or 8 months or so to flesh that out, how that would work. I think, you know, this is half of our budget. So this is about $2,500 a year for these maps, so.
And Bjorn, we will not make it till June.
Right.
They just don't even know.
That's why it may be worth exploring partnering with someone from the county or some other businesses to develop one of these apps. So that way it's just repeatable on hey, download this app on your phone, you get the map. Those kind of things.
What about the state? The state has a biking organization. Maybe they have this map on their website. You know,
But DelDOT would be the organization that would provide.
It benefits them. You've done all the heavy lifting of developing the map.
but there's also.
I bet you the businesses, the
statewide
bike shops
bicycle
would
committee,
would
remember I
partner
went to
with
the
this.
bike shop? Do they have this map on their website? Like,
They don't have it.
we should send it to
They have a
them.
more generalized map. They have county maps with bicycle friendly routes. And then DelDOT has a Bay Area map that shows more general, but not as specific as to what we have here. So for the city of Lewes.
If we have an electronic copy already of it, maybe they can just put the PDF on their site that people could download it from their site.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, we have, like I mentioned, that go to our committee page on the city website. We have the bylaws and the map at the bottom as a hyperlink. So people can, download them and save them to their phone or to their computer if they wanted to.
Ask a question.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna call.
Well, I knew you had me pegged.
I'm wondering if you all might benefit from possibly asking the Parks and Rec administrator to see if there's something that might be done. And I don't know the answer, but possibly since she is here, she might be able to address that, where this map might be placed in a more public space on your department's website, possibly.
Well, we should probably,
You want to come to the and introduce yourself?
no, I'll just sit right here. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that.
Oh, she's sabotaging the equipment now. Yeah, it's on, there you go.
Okay, so I have a couple of thoughts. I mean, I could get the map uploaded on the Parks and Recreation page. Or we have, and I can talk to Janelle about this because we're all kind of going through training on being able to update the website, is to put it embedded someplace where we have other maps, such as the parking lots, where it's free parking, where it's metered parking. So we might be able to kind of get it in there. So I will follow up on that.
Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome. I'll put it on my list.
All right, that's great. Good discussion on the map. And we'll move on. Oh, hi, Dennis.
Just doing a quick read here, and there's a typo
Okay.
on the responsibilities of bicycling.
Okay.
Is it double arrow?
Scroll it down, bicycles are not permitted on sidewalks within those. You got 2 L's there for those.
You're absolutely right. Good job.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
An awful lot of stuff. Just a thought. I like the map a lot, by the way.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Great. We also have a lot of extra eyes to edit these things too. So that's a great segue into the next announcement, the Delaware Bicycle Council Grant Project. We met in June, I think, and did a tour, a bike tour around town. Janet was there, these guys were there, and I think, Bob GPS the route. And the process was to develop a low stress, or what we call the Lewes Loop low stress bikeway. If you've been to areas of Dover, Newark, and some other cities in Delaware, they've all developed these. Typically, the signage is like a purple sign, and it takes you through an area where there's less traffic. Typically, it's on streets or roads, but where there's less traffic and where riding is easier. We came up with a roughly, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, about a 4-mile loop that takes you from, if you're following along on the map, it takes you from starting at the Lewes Library trailhead. You would follow the Lewes Georgetown Rail Trail to DeVries Circle, go through DeVries Circle, cross Savannah Road, go down to Sussex Drive. It takes you back to Highland Acres. Right. And now Highland Acres is connected to Mariners by a little stub trail there that Randy Burton put in. And then from there, you're going out through Pilottown Village, back Marina Drive, northeast on Marina Drive, and then back to town on 4th Street Extended.
We go Burton, we went West 4th to Burton to 3rd, and then crossed Savannah again at 3rd.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I know.
The map that was submitted for the grant.
Okay.
Yep.
I know we tried some different ideas for
Right.
returning to the library.
So the loop isn't marked out on this map, right?
Not yet, no, because we haven't received the grant. And Janet, if you would like to provide us an update, Janet was very helpful in writing the grant, putting together the language. Bob provided us with the GPS data. And then there was feedback from the entire committee, and I think a couple of other folks, well, Tim was there as well, and I don't know if any of the other council members were there, or there was a couple residents that were also with us.
Right.
That provided us feedback along the route. So Janet, could you provide us with an update?
Sure. So the grant was submitted in about mid-August. I was able to get an estimate that stub that goes from Highland Acres over to Seagull and Pilot Town Village needs a curb cut. So I was able to obtain an estimate for that. And then we got estimates for the bike counters, because when you do the grants, they want to see how we're capturing the usage of it. So the total requested was about $20,000 for that. And I haven't done, I don't know if you've done any of those bike grants in the past, but I have not, so I don't really know, what to expect, but they did, I know they got it because they called me, emailed me, and they just had one question: if the bike loop was all on city roadways or did it include state roadways? And the only state roadways are crossing Kings Highway and crossing Savannah. So you're not actually on that piece of road, you're crossing it. And both of those crossings are clearly marked. They have crosswalks. When you're crossing Kings Highway, you're actually on the bike trail, which is very, very well marked, and people stopping. And the other one on Savannah is a well-marked crosswalk, as is the one coming back across Savannah on 3rd. So
Does the grant include wayfinding signage,
we're
or?
going to wrap that into the city's whole wayfinding
Okay,
project. I talked with the city manager about that with Anne Marie. So we'll just wrap that in there.
okay, great.
So there's not a lot of construction. It's, it's existing roads. It's just the curb cut, the counter. And there is a right-of-way issue, so we'll have to address that. It's going through.
Right between Highland
Yes,
and Mariners?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, but I don't think that'll be an issue.
and did,
Is that can you describe that, please?
So.
Um,
So the path that's already there,
Right.
it's wide enough for bikes. I mean, I've written it, but I think that there are two houses on either side.
Mhm.
One is existing now and the other one is not, but I think we need to talk to the homeowners association about, going through that piece of land there.
And so this would be in the new Mariners Cove community, is that correct, who you're approaching?
Correct. Yeah, that's where we go through.
yes,
Right.
the stub is owned by Mariners Cove Development. The stub that connects Mariners Cove and Highland Acres.
And so even the portion that comes over to Highland Acres is owned by the
Mariners.
HOA, Mariners HOA? Interesting.
Now, we discussed at the last meeting about the city writing up an MOU or MOA.
Yeah, but
That
we have to do that with the HOA.
Okay.
Janet, I'd like to ask you about this counter that you spoke about. Is this something that would be a permanent installation, or is this something that's moved around the town as we collect data?
It could be moved around. What we had talked about when we were doing that ride back in June or May was putting it at that point when you go from Highland Acres into Mariners Cove, but it's not permanent. It can be moved.
It's a tube counter, so it's like a
Yes.
hose on the.
So you're riding over it, and that's how it's counted.
Right.
Now, technically, is Mariners, is that open to the public? I mean, will he let you put a sign there eventually, or no? Because that's all private property when you go through their development, right?
Right. We might have to put it like at the end of the trail before you cut over.
Now, is that a dedicated road too in the development, or is that a private road?
will be a city road.
That's city.
Right. I don't think, the last time I was in there, it didn't have its finished surface in there,
No, I
but
haven't finished.
it might be by now. It's been a
A
while
lot of
since.
towns now won't do that. They don't take the road. They make the homeowners be responsible for
Right.
the road.
Right, but this is Lewes.
Has that been turned over to the HO at this point? Do you know, Dennis? Is Randy still a person to speak with?
They don't finish those, put that final surface on the streets until well after all the construction's done.
Right,
And, but when we approved, when we approved that, we put the stub in, they had the bollards there, so you couldn't take the car through there. I don't know that you need permission, it's really public access from.
Well, I obtained verbal permission from Randy. But since all the lots are sold now, I believe the ownership has shifted to the HOA, so.
Okay.
Usually they wait until they're like 85%, 75 to 85% finished before they turn it over to the.
right.
Okay.
Those sold out.
Okay, sorry.
I'll check with Randy.
Yeah, maybe it's you're dealing with one person,
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
18 people or whatever it is.
So the grants are awarded, I think, by April 1st. So.
Okay, great. And thank you again, Janet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks again, Janet, for helping with that.
Yeah.
All about the effort. It's all about-
Right, thank you.
Yeah. We'll move on to item B, approval of minutes from the June 1st, 2021 meeting. Are there any edits? Dr. Knight, Bob, are you still able to hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Any comments about the minutes? Okay, the motion to approve.
So moved.
And a second. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to old business, these are some items we discussed at the last meeting. I believe we made recommendations to mayor and council on all three of these items. However, no action has been taken since our June 1st meeting, so I brought them back in to just make sure that they don't get lost. We had, during our Lewes Loop concept ride, if you want to call it that, I guess, we discovered that, well, we didn't discover, it was brought to our attention, there's no crosswalk at New Road and Forecastle Lane. And a lot of folks use that connector across New Road to connect to the Park Road bike path that leads out to the university. Even though the speed limit's now 25 there, we know that people are driving 25 through there. So I believe it's still important that we keep this as a, and I don't know, we've made a recommendation to mayor and council. I'm not sure what we should do at this point. If it's on Anne Marie's desk, since you guys, I believe, approved.
This one.
Council approved this.
I think, go ahead, Tim.
It's my recollection, we did take it out. And the instructions were to Anne Marie to communicate your ask to Del Dot.
Right.
What I will also share with you more recently is, of course, the meeting that Del Dot had. It's a virtual meeting, and they shared a more updated design for the improvements that are coming to New Road. And it extends now all the way to Forecastle. So I anticipate, and yet they're also, they showed on this preliminary design work, they showed creating a crossing over to Park Road. I'm not prepared, I'm not authorized to speak for Del Dot, but I would suggest that it's probably unlikely that they're going to make any big improvements until they actually do the improvements to New Road that are, the approach on each side of Canary Creek. But
I think that's on the 2023 calendar.
yeah, it's coming sooner rather than later. It's been brought forward in their planning schedule. So that's what
My recollection as well. We had recommend, because we can't put the crosswalk there. I think it's to be done by Del Dot. I think our action was to essentially support
Okay,
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
so maybe getting it in their queue.
Right.
For 2023. I believe that project starts after Labor Day in 2023. I think New Road, what I read, it was going to be closed for 7 months.
Right.
I read.
Right.
I think we try to widen it, or they really can't widen it, right? New
Uh, They're making a couple accommodations for some turn lanes, but as far as widening, dualizing it, that's not, if that was your question, John, that's not gonna
Right,
happen.
because they put new utility poles in and they put them back in the same place, so I assume they weren't gonna try to widen the road.
No, it's made recently.
Was that in this area or was that farther out towards Tower Hill are you
Oh, yeah.
speaking of?
It was between us and old, was it Old Orchard, where you make the turn?
That's different.
Street from Tower Hill.
Right.
At one point in the planning process, I saw a concept of a two-way bike lane on the north side of New Road. Most of the way from town and out to the bakery. And I don't know where that stands now. I haven't seen any more recent plans for that development.
They were parallel to.
At grade, but I mean separated, but at grade.
Well, there's no bike path further up. You cross Old Orchard, that one little development has their own little bike path for like, a couple hundred feet. There's a
Oh, yeah.
out bike path.
Mhm.
I don't know why they didn't try to get the developer of that new development to give up some land to have something.
Tower Hill, you're speaking of?
That was in their concept.
That is in their
originally.
plan, and they're committed to doing that.
So they're gonna have a little section of bike path through there.
Yes, and it's my understanding from the preliminary plans that were put forward some time ago that it would run across the front of that Tower Hill property. So that's the expectation that's been established. There would be a bike path in the city along the Lewes Waterfront Preserve community, the townhome community. There will be the length of the bike path running across the width of that property. So on the south side of New Road, and then it will at some point in time cross over to the Tower Hill side and proceed westward at that point in time. I don't know how, once it gets to the far end of Tower Hill, that's going to be the terminus, a temporary terminus until, the next development comes on. I don't know. I can't answer that, but yeah.
Okay. So the city limits now extend out beyond Canary Creek.
Right.
Do you know where the new boundary is?
Yes, it's, do you know where Canary Creek Drive is? It serves do you know where the property where Lewes Waterfront Preserve is to be built? Okay, there's a private driveway that's just beyond. Okay, it serves a total of 3 houses. The city line is actually on the west side of that driveway.
Okay.
Okay.
It's where the new speed limits are, right? They pushed out the speed limits to the edge of town.
Yeah,
That's
correct. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to item number 2 under old business, Cedar Street bike lanes. There's a lot of discussion about this at the last meeting. We had a lot of input from Nick Carter on this, including videos and concerns from him. So I don't know what the status is on this. I believe council did not, we made a recommendation to council. I believe council did not.
We didn't take action on it. I'll explain my reason. I'll explain why I voted not to take action on it, simply because there was a lot of work done by the beach parking committee. And there were some recommendations that came out of that beach parking committee that have not yet been actioned by staff. And in examining this project, you really recommended that there be no parking at all on Cedar. So that's not really in conjunction with what the recommendations that came out of that committee.
I have to stop you there because I don't believe that our committee said no parking.
Well, you said if if you said
no diagonal parking.
on seat, I think it was, the comment was that if you were to make a bike lane on Cedar, that you couldn't at the same time support the idea of commingling parking on Cedar because it would be an unsafe situation for bikers. But correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that was the case.
I'd have to go.
I'm willing to check the tape,
No, I
but
think you said parallel park, diagonal, because parallel parking, you could
See the biker coming, but diagonal, you wouldn't.
I mean, it's not ideal. Diagonal parking is the worst for cyclists, but with 15 feet of right of way, I believe there's room for parallel parking, a safety zone for doors to swing, and then a bike lane at grade, but next to, the travel lanes. So not an ideal situation, but better than what we have today.
sure. And then you still went against the idea of exploring a two-way bike lane like that we see in, say, Rehoboth's, when they go into town across the bridge, for example, there's a two-way. And then I spoke to Milford's, they did a pilot on a two-way, and to be honest, he said that it was just too short of a pilot, and there were some shortcomings with the design itself to really get anything out of whether that was successful. But that's a non-starter in terms of how you.
It is, because when a cyclist, say if they're cycling on, say we put a bike lane on the beach house side, Children's Beach House side, when you reach the end of that Cedar Street, you then have to either get off your bike, walk across through the crosswalk to get to the other side, to be on the correct side of the road, biking with traffic. So that's my concern.
Understood. And then the other piece, and maybe Dennis, if you're willing to speak to this further, but the other thing was the idea that there was a lot of work and negotiation, I'll call it, that was put into declaring Bay to be a multimodal street, and that was done with DelDOT. So then having attained that multimodal designation, to go back to DelDOT and say that's still not sufficient for us. I'm not against it. Don't get me wrong, I'm willing to go back to them, but maybe you want to speak to, was there at that time a bike lane explored? Does DelDOT make a recommendation?
And actually, Bay Avenue is not a state street, it's a city street, and that's why we were able to do an ordinance which made it a multimodal street. And the biggest reason was for kids on bicycles, because our former chief of police decided to start giving tickets to kids going the wrong way on Bay Avenue. And so we enlisted the aid of Fritz Schrank, who was a DelDOT attorney for about 26 years, and he was retired. But we got in touch with him, and he came, and he's the one that really helped us a great deal to make that a multimodal street. And city passed an ordinance to do that. And it's been a huge success. I mean, Bay Avenue to me is more like our Lewis's boardwalk. It's people walking both ways, bicycles, baby carriages. It's so smooth now, you get skateboards and everything else. So it's really a plus for the city and the bicycles. It's so much safer. It's 10 miles an hour. There's a stop sign at each corner, and it's very, very safe. We haven't had any problems up there that I'm aware of. And we're not forcing bicyclists to go over on the Cedar Street. And when we talk about Cedar Street being an issue for bicyclists, really, it's probably about 20 days of the summer, and that's it. It's only when there are cars parked on both sides of the street that the bicyclists have to ride out into the paved surface. Otherwise, they can ride on the side, and it's not really a problem. And that's why to put a bicycle lane in there, you can't park a car in there. You shouldn't be crossing through it for 365 days of a year. And in my opinion, and my good friend Nick and I have had many arguments on this. We're both on the opposite sides of the coin here. I don't believe that we should have a bicycle lane on Cedar Street. I don't see the value. I see it taking away parking. And we have a shortage of parking for people that want to go to the beach to begin with. So there has to be a real balance here in what's in the best interest of the city, and the beach is really a popular area. There are a very limited areas to park in. Tim is very much aware of it, Andrew is, and the city is reclaiming some of the right of way on the connector streets to allow for parking. And so the city is addressing that issue. So they're my thoughts.
Dennis, could you state your address?
1302 Bay Avenue.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The more biker friendly we make the city, the less parking you'll need. The idea is to get more people to use their bikes and not drive their car.
That would be great if people actually rode their bicycle to the beach, but it doesn't happen. You can't carry what people carry to our beach on a bicycle. You'd have to put a trailer on it. I mean, I live on a beach access, and our area between my house and the next house is actually Oregon Avenue, and people park there. You can't believe the amount of things that these people take to the beach and the size of the carts. People will not ride their bicycle to the beach, and if they did, that would be great. I really think that would be a wonderful thing, but it just doesn't happen.
Well, if you make parking more difficult, then people will look for an alternative. If you make it too easy, they don't look for the alternative. They're lazy, you know?
Well, I like that concept, but when you have a limited amount of parking to begin with, to take some of that away, I don't see where it's the benefit. Like I said, you have to have a balance between access to the beach and getting to the beach. A lot of the people that use our beach don't live in Lewes. It's a great tourist attraction. A lot of these people use the restaurants and things in town. I see delivery trucks bringing food to people all the time. And so it is a benefit, an economic benefit to the city as well, to have these people and their ability to park there.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, any other questions?
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah, Tim.
Speaking of Bay Avenue as multimodal, is that street signed as a multimodal?
The only sign is when you come up a connector street to Bay Avenue.
Right.
There's a yellow sign that has pedestrian on it and an arrow going both ways.
Correct.
That's the only thing that identifies that as a multimodal street. And there's a stop sign at every one of those connector streets at Bay Avenue. So that makes it safe too. We talked about putting yield signs in there, and we had a lot of discussion, and most of the people that live there were opposed to that for safety issue.
Do you think that the sign that you described, which I think you indicating for pedestrians, does that also convey the message of it being available for cyclists, that it's a designated preferred route for cyclists?
And I look at that every day, Tim, and I don't want to answer that because I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at it to be absolutely certain. I'll give you a holler when we.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I just can't
take
remember.
a picture of it.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Dennis and I have known each other for a long time, and this is, my address is 1510 Bay Avenue, Lewes Beach. I grew up there. And Dennis and I have disagreed on this for many, many years when he was on city council. So I'm taking the opposite position that this is about safety, most important for pedestrians, cyclists, and for vehicle drivers. The important thing, I'll talk about a couple of things that Dennis brought up. Number one, Bay Avenue cyclists can go and pedestrians can go both directions. Cars can only go in one direction. And I brought this up at the last meeting that the stop sign for the vehicles is only for the cars. If a cyclist is going in the opposite direction and they're required to stop, there's no stop sign for them. So if you're coming in onto a state street and you're going to turn right on Bay Avenue and there's a cyclist coming down this way, he has no stop sign. That's a serious, I think, safety issue. You can't put stop signs in both directions for cyclists because the cars are going one way and the cyclists are going both ways. So it's complicated, number one. as far as the people that come to the beach and park their cars on Cedar Street, they really don't go in town for lunch or for dinner because they can't find a parking place in town. They come to the beach, they try the city lot at Savannah, they go to Cape and Lipton State Park, and then they come down to Cedar Street because it's free. And they really don't go into town. And I don't think it's an economic benefit. The use of the beach is for their benefit, but I don't think they're spending money in the restaurants. I think they pack up and go home. As far as Cedar Street's concerned, it is operated and controlled by the state. It is a Del Dot road. I don't know if I mentioned this at the last meeting, but I did some research. I contacted Del Dot. And I said, who maintains and who supervises and enforces the road, Cedar Street? And the Del Dot representative, the public relations person at Del Dot said, well, we have a shared jurisdiction with the city of Lewes. So my immediate question was, well, what exactly does that mean? When you say you have shared jurisdiction, what does that mean? Well, let's be very clear. Cedar Street, there's 2 lanes on Cedar Street. There's 2 side lanes, which I believe should be bike lanes. And there's an additional 12 feet on both sides of that. That's owned by the state. That's state property. That's not city property, it's state property. There is some encroachment. In fact, there's quite a bit of encroachment by private residents that have built fences and mailboxes and shrubberies and trees. And as Dennis told me earlier, it's been going on for many, many years, but it's literally encroachment of state property, and nobody has enforced it. Nobody stopped it. It's set a precedence in the city, and anybody that lives on Cedar Street, if they were thinking, they would put a fence right out onto the lane to block off that 12 feet. In fact, when they did the survey, the stakes were very clear. The 12-foot area was very clear, and many of those stakes have been removed. So back to the parking, what would happen is that if we were able to get that 12 feet, you could create designated parking. So you have the road, you have the 2 bike lanes on both sides, and you have 12 feet for designated parking. And the bikes would go down the bike lane towards the yacht club, and when you come back, you go back on the other side of the road. So there's 2 sides on both sides of the street where there's 12 feet, and it would be parallel. It could be designated parking. I'm a proponent for permit parking, but that's a whole nother topic. That's a whole nother issue. So I don't want to go to permit. I just want to go to designated parking. And this is for safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists. And we're not going to lose that many parking places. If you go down and do the math and figure out this 12 feet on both sides of the road and calculate the length of the car and calculate how many spaces, you're not going to lose that many spaces. And the danger, as Dennis pointed out, was if you're parking in the designated parking area and a cyclist is coming down on the lane on a bicycle and somebody opens the door. Well, that's happening now because the cars are parking in the bike lanes and they're opening their doors into the roadway, not only in front of cyclists, pedestrians, but also in front of motorists. That's a bigger safety problem. So
But Nick, with 12 feet,
It's 12 feet.
you know, cars are typically about 5.5 feet wide or 6 feet wide. With a door,
Yeah, they're probably, I don't know.
12 feet is sufficient.
I think there's enough room to park it onto the right side of the 12-foot area to still be able to open your door and not clip a cyclist. And then also, the other thing is that cars that are parking in these, I call them bike lanes, that park in the bike lanes create a visibility problem, because if you come out of a state street and you're going to turn left onto Cedar, a lot of times you can't see past the shrubbery or the cars that are parked in the bike lane. And you have a car coming down Cedar Street and you're trying to make a left-hand turn. That was in one of the photos that I sent at the last meeting. So again, I think the biggest problem is going to be the property owners on Cedar Street that have commandeered and encroached onto state property. And I won't mention any names, but I know a few of them, and they will be very upset, I'm sure. In fact, one of them called me and said, well, what are you going to do? Bring a bulldozer down and just carve 12 feet, down Cedar Street? And I said, well, you're encroaching on state property. The state doesn't really want to address this. My Freedom of Information Act request for the shared jurisdiction document, there is no such thing. It's nothing in writing at all. They said, we don't have it. And this was the attorney from DelDOT responded to me personally. What she did do was she sent me Title 17, which it talks about what DelDOT can and cannot do. But there is no definition, no maintenance, no control, no enforcement between the city and DelDOT regarding a shared jurisdiction enforcement or maintenance. So I've presented that to the city. I mean, the city knows it. And DelDOT knows it, but I don't know where this is going to go. But right now, the precedence has been set. If I lived on Cedar Street, I would have my mailbox and my fence and my shrubbery right up against the bike lane because that's the precedence that's been set.
Now, are any of those easements for utilities? I mean,
Pardon me?
any of those, that 12-foot easement, is that actually for utilities? Like in the future, they do have easements?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't know. And what I requested a survey from DelDOT regarding their 12-foot, and they didn't have that. They wouldn't give that to me.
That's a great question. Do you know if the utilities are within that easement?
I don't know.
Because a lot of times those easements are for the utilities. And that's
I don't know if it is or isn't, but I can tell you, I've requested that, the survey from DelDOT and they wouldn't give it to me.
Because where I live, it's 25 feet from the center of the road to your house, right? Like.
Probably. I'm not sure
About Lakeview Boulevard.
Right.
And when they did the pear tree trimming or something, the city paid for it because my tree was on city property technically. Because they had from 25 feet from the center of the road to my property. And like, so a section for, I guess, utilities or whatever they wanted to put.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. The city would know. I mean, the Board of Public Works would know.
Right.
That's the first person to call would be the Board of Public Works to see where their utility easements are if they're in that 12-foot state property.
The
section.
general description that's been offered in meetings that I've attended with the city and DelDOT is that the pole line that you would see running down Cedar, and I believe it's on the, if I remember correctly, it's on the canal side of Cedar, that it is actually at the edge of the right-of-way where the right-of-way meets private property. That's what I've been told as a general description.
Yeah, I don't know the answer, but the Board of Public Works would have the answer to that. We can get their layout for electric and water. A sewer probably runs down the street, but electric and water, I don't know.
Well, to follow up on that, this is a question for Andrew and or Tim. Would you be able to follow up with our city solicitor and ask whether or not there is an agreement that Nick is referring to between the city of Lewes and DelDOT?
Yeah, I've made note of that.
Okay.
I was told by counsel at DelDOT that there's no such agreement. There's no such written shared jurisdiction agreement. I asked for it specifically and Freedom of Information Act requested. They said there isn't such a thing. But maybe the city has a copy of it, but
the city plots Cedar, right?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Because the state plows Savannah and Kings, don't they? Because it's a state road. So who plows the road in the wintertime?
That's my question exactly. Who maintains it, enforces it? Who's ultimately culpable if something should happen? I mean, if somebody were killed, I don't know who's culpable. It's the city, the state, the sheriff? Are they going to split it 50-50? I don't know. That's,
I know Jonathan is on the call. Jonathan, do you have any, Officer Moyer, do you have any comments on this discussion?
I know we enforce the traffic law there. I don't know as far as the maintenance and all that. I'm not sure what they have going on there.
So there's still some unanswered questions before.
So, I mean, it sounds like what you're proposing does not require additional pavement. So with respect to pervious coverage, you're not proposing to widen the need to widen Cedar or anything like that.
No, and if you go to Bethany Beach, I mean, if you go to the parallel streets to the boardwalk in Bethany, you'll see this very similar where they have the roadway, the bike lane, and then they have pervious material for designated parking. In fact, they have parking meters. So it's paid parking. Now, I'm not suggesting that. I'm a proponent of that, but I'm not suggesting that.
It could be,
Actually, I am suggesting it, but.
it could be pervious pavers like they put in on,
And a lot of it already is. I mean, some of the property owners have gravel stone out there in this state maintained area. Well, Dick Cecil's houses are.
Across the beach house used to flood all the time. I mean, whenever we had heavy rains, they would stay there for days and days and days. So
And most of the people that park in front of the Children's Beach House come in on a parallel angle. And that was the other safety issues I think that came up. If you try to come in, not parallel, but on diagonal.
Right.
And when you're backing out diagonally, you can't see past the car to your right. So you back out into the roadway or into the bike lane. So that's why I think that, the front and back
Right.
designated parking. And you're not going to lose that many spaces. I'd have to do the math, but I don't think you'll.
And I believe our streets department actually aligns that in the early season, summer season, and it's on a diagonal. I believe I saw that this summer. Andrew, do you have any recollection of that along the beach, Children's Beach House property?
Yeah, they line it.
And I know they have
It was
line,
line.
and I think it was on a diagonal, not perpendicular.
Well, the other one last comment is if you go to Coleman Street in town, I mean, they just repaved all of Coleman Street and it's all asphalt down the middle and this beautiful brick lane, and they have designated parking on
Right.
brick lane for Coleman Street.
And
it did not used to be there. And they could do the same thing, but use pervious material on Cedar Street.
well, actually, just to add that brick paved or brick areas, they are.
That's
part of the drainage. There's a drainage issue there.
Right.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's well done. And they're designated spots.
Yeah,
I know
very
tonight on the way
expensive.
over, I came down 4th Street and we crossed Savannah. They redid 4th Street, they paved it, and they have designated parking spots drawn out on the ground. They never had that before.
Right.
Are they gonna do that in all the city streets now? or?
Not that
You like it? You do.
No, I'm just saying, it's the first time I saw it like there. I mean, and they put it by.
Yeah, that came out of the downtown parking committee. So as I mentioned before, there was a beach parking committee, and they come out with, and that was one that, as you said, to encourage the recognition that, hey, I can park here and it's
Right.
free,
Because on 3rd Street by the Historical Society, they did the designated parking on one side, which a lot of people think now you can't park on the other side, but you can. There's no sign.
Sure can. Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know why you didn't put it on both sides, but.
In my conversation with the gentleman from Milford, he's actually their city planner, responsible for their biking. They had done, and it's available on their city site, is a master plan. And he told me that this was funded, again, probably a similar grant, but ultimately DelDOT recommended this Century Engineering. And I'll forward you the link to this, but I just was, one question, has the city ever engaged in a master plan looking at this holistically and how bikes interact with cars and things like that?
Bike and pedestrian, no such
Our
thing.
committee is not, no, that I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah, I'll forward you this link by, it's very robust study and, I think the thing, like I said, it was cooperative between DelDOT, the Milford, and I'll have to look back at my other notes around who was a third party that helped kind of fund it. I'm not sure, I neglected to ask him how much it cost. But it's impressive. It looks different maps around the city and the purpose of why someone would use that bike route, whether it's industrial, to go to work or to go to a library and things like that. And they did a similar thing to what you all did on the map with scoring out, hey, this is a riskier, this is safe, that kind of thing. But I think the thing was done by an outside agency, and then they're going to run it through their bike and ped committee. So it was the bike and ped committee's idea to say, hey, let's do this, to have an engineering firm look at it, and then it's going to come back to them for recommendations, and then back out to council for the basically adoption of this plan. Yeah.
And with public involvement along.
But it's been a long process for them. To be fair, 2008, he said it was the original master plan, and now here they are, 2021. He said he hopes before the end of the year that this gets approved by their council. So.
But we have that damaged sidewalk map, and they still haven't fixed most of the sidewalks that I've mentioned 2 years ago already,
I think they're in the queue whenever the roads are being done. But let me just piggyback on that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
If you look on Rehoboth Beach website, they've got a similar comprehensive plan. And it was probably about the same time period, 2008, 2009. But it is available on the website. And it is a comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian plan for the city of Rehoboth that I think that we could look at that and get some ideas on how we might proceed. Maybe the grants, maybe for next year, we could apply to something like that.
I think it's a very good point about having a master plan. There's so many great committees in town, but sometimes this one's talking this, this one's talking this, this one's talking this, and this parking and bicycling thing needs to be coordinated. If they're going to do something with parking down on the beach, and we're talking about bicycling, it needs to be coordinated. And I know one of the reasons at the June meeting, when this was deferred or turned down, however you want to put it, was Mr. Saliba said he thought it was premature to look at even doing this, the bike lanes. Well, I feel that it needs to be done in coordination with parking because they're going to affect each other. So as far as a master plan, I think it's a great idea. And Ms. Jones commented on that we want to be taking away parking, but that's not the case. We're looking at reclaiming the right of way that has been taken. And it's ample room, as been spoken, there's 12 foot on each side. It's ample for bicyclists and parking. It's there. And as far as Bay Avenue being met to molded, I understand that. That's great. And Doris, I was going to say, I don't remember if the bicycle pedestrian committee at the time agreed with that idea. Maybe you do. I know it was done through council. But I know it was positive that Mike Tyler at the time was opposed to doing the wrong way on a one-way street. And the council at the time made the decision to make it that way anyway for the reasons that you stated. Personally, I don't ride on Bay in the summertime or towards the inlet because you're constantly dodging cars. You have to pull out. It's a game of chicken because there's not room for both. You can put in someone's driveway or raise the edge over it. As Mr. Carter spoke, to people making a right-hand turn, they're looking left. Oh, nothing's coming. And it's so while it's 10 miles an hour and it's safety in some ways, there are some detriments to being there. So when I go down to Roosevelt Inlet, I ride on Cedar Street.
Isn't state law, the bicycle has to ride with traffic?
Right. Hey, it's also the state law that if you're riding on a state right of way, or that you are going to stop, you're going to operate your bicycle as if you're in an automobile.
But you don't have to stop at stop signs. It's a yield sign for bicycles. That's not one of the problems too, that
Technically, if it's safe to yield, yes, you don't have to
but they,
stop.
they don't stop anyway. I mean, to them, it just means I can go wherever I feel like going.
So cyclists don't make good judgments about.
And the speed limit on Cedar Street is 25, so, you know, if they're 25 to 30 miles an hour down Cedar Street, so it is a safety issue.
Yeah. May I ask you a question about this idea of putting a bike lanes on Cedar? Would it be your expectation that they would actually be multimodal? In other words, pedestrians would be encouraged to use these paths too, or would they just be for cycling?
Well, we'd have to look at the actual, with the 15 feet of right away from the edge of the travel lane to the property line. We'd have to look to see if we could accommodate pedestrians and cyclists. It's a great point. In that bike lane, similar to what they do on Route 1 or other areas where they've combined cyclists and pedestrians, one going in one direction, one going in the opposite direction. So that's a great question.
Well, there's no sidewalk, so you kind of have to walk somewhere in the gutter. I mean, right? Right. So you're gonna end up walking in the bike path. If it's designated, you can figure it's gonna be the safest place. to go.
Right.
There's a comment in the chat from Khalil. Can you read it or do you want me to read it? He said, hello all. I did say it was quote premature to approve a bike lane until the city staff has proposed a parking plan. I followed that bike lane consideration should be coordinated with parking plans.
Thank you for the comment.
How do we have intercommittee discussion? Is there a procedure for that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think in the case of the beach parking, there was a discussion of, for example, incorporating more bike racks. And I think you may have informally turned to some, members of this committee, but not brought them into the discussion, for example, around, hey, which streets would be style, et cetera.
Actually,
Yeah, you did?
actually
Okay.
on that, yeah, I did
Okay.
provide,
Good, good, yeah.
and I think, no, it wasn't, it was, Rob,
yeah.
sorry, with 5 locations.
Okay, so you did, okay, good,
Bike
good.
racks,
Okay, so that,
But it's, as so now, I believe anything's done.
and I think that's all, to Khalil's point, those were all part of the recommendations that we
Yeah.
forwarded to staff to sort of,
Right.
I don't know, call explore or enact, yeah.
But what about the adage, if you build it, they will come, the more bike racks there are, maybe the more cyclists will use their bicycle instead of driving to the beach. We have a trailer on our bike.
Yeah, I mean, same issue, we approved a bike rack to be put on Third Street recently in a council, and it's not there.
Still not there.
Is that the one they go, you want to make it artsy or something? That the bike rack has to be a piece of art?
I want the record to stand.
Another committee. It's another committee.
Yeah, that's another committee. And yeah, the idea it was that we would introduce the idea that the bike rack could be artful in addition to be purposeful. And it would be therefore attractive in that way, and effectively communicate that it is in fact still a purpose, it is a bike rack. So
People know it's a bike rack if it's too much like a piece of art. Would people realize it is a bike rack?
well, I'm not an artist, so I can't speak to that. But I think,
That's been discussing public art.
yeah,
But I think right now, we'd be happy with
a bike rack.
I can comment on the last time that was done. There were 3 bike racks put in by, I think it was the Public Art Committee, and they're non-functional bike racks.
Where are they located?
One was at the Lewes, the old Lewes Library.
Oh.
And one was at 1812 Park, and I believe one was Canal Front Park.
And these were not traditional bike
Not
racks?
traditional at all, no.
Okay. Are those bike racks still in place?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Okay,
We'll have to check that out.
I'd like to just know about that. Thank you.
Because some bike racks they have around in other places too. If they get too fancy, they're also not good bike racks. They don't hold the bike well.
Okay, that's what I'm referring to, yeah.
And
the bike racks.
it's just like, it's got to be a bike rack. That's got to be its primary function.
Sure.
You want to paint it paisley or something, but it still has to hold the bike and hold it where they can lock it and it doesn't fall over.
Right. Good point. Good point. Can we circle back on that particular issue about the locations that you've mentioned?
Yeah, definitely check 1812 and then the Lewis History Museum. I believe there's one there. So.
Okay.
But there was one.
let's talk about a bike at 1812 rack that looks more like a piece of fence.
Yeah.
Like a decorative fence? Yeah.
All right, well, we'll,
Don, I know we'll move on, can I just piggyback also on a master plan? Is there any knowledge to what is the plan for beach parking? Or is that just something that's being worked on and Ms. Townsend's pretty much the only one that knows, or I'm asking Tim or Andrew?
I'm gonna let Andrew answer
I
that.
know, yeah, it's with the city staff
City
right now.
staff, okay.
I think, there were some various recommendations that were made,
Oh, I'm not aware of the recommendations.
but I think it's an ongoing thing where, yeah, and I think to your point, this plays into it, right?
Well, the reason I bring that up is because if in fact there were to be permit parking, and I don't know that there really won't, I know it was discussed. I wonder how parking would be when people actually have to pay to park. It's one thing, if people park there because it's free.
Sure.
And the same thing with raising right area. Is that going to be always going to be a free parking lot? It's again, they play together, and it determines things.
Well, Cedar Street could become paid parking as well.
That's what I mean. It's not just going to be the beach, it's going to be through downtown business area. We don't know, that's why I'm asking. We're trying to think about doing something, but we don't know other parts, and it all needs to be coordinated.
No, agreed. I mean, there's been no recommendation to currently to charge for parking in those areas, but
I know it was discussed, so.
yeah,
And the
exactly.
staff is
And
also
it's-
not reported out to us.
Well, you can't put meters in front of people's houses, though.
Right? In millimeters, it's parking permit.
Yeah, you do. And Dewey, they do it via Park Mobile. So there's zone numbers assigned and it's done virtually.
No, but I'm saying just from that person's house, you're taking away their spot when you make it paid parking, right?
If they have a permit, then that negates that, I guess. That's the idea. And that's how they do it in some of these resort towns. You buy like a yearly. So, but we're getting a little off.
Yeah,
Off topic.
I would be talking
Yeah.
about parking issues the rest of the evening. And I think that we live in town and it's an ongoing issue for us.
Well, personally, I think the city cares too much about parking and tourists and not enough about the residents' access to things.
I mean, we're happy if you want to make a note, a motion back to council, we're happy to take it up.
Cedar Street?
You need to attach it. I think what I would say is attach it, make it different. Maybe you do attach it to the considerate, maybe you're making it something like that, where you're suggesting they attach it to part of the parking considerations. That doesn't, I'm not saying we're gonna vote yes, yeah, or no, but, it's something that we could take forward for consideration, the rest of the council.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the motion just to see if Delbot would even look at it? And that's all we really wanted to accomplish? Because ultimately Delbot's gonna have the say so, correct?
Let's get into this shared jurisdiction piece because.
That was the impression that I was left with, but that's the first I've heard about the shared jurisdiction thing.
Yeah, because you speak to one person, they say, Delbot wants to leave it up to Lewes to decide on themselves, and then other people say it's a state road and we have to build it. So.
Yeah, I believe the committee, the council, mayor, and, the city staff will have to drive this issue more than Delbot's going to drive it. So I think we start here, but or also with city staff to move this forward.
But the city has to want a bike path to approach the state for a bike path. So step one is, does the city want a bike path there, right?
And I'm not saying this would happen, but potentially we'd hold a larger workshop for the community to have a discussion around that. And
That's the first step. If the city
exactly
wants to go forward with it, then they approach the state, right?
I slightly disagree. The bike path is there. The shoulder is there. It's ample shoulder for bicycles.
It's just not designated.
It's
as
not
such.
designated as a bike path. Designated,
Right.
And the parking does, people parking do conflict with people riding bikes through there because of encroachment issues.
So you say go right to the state and have the state come up with a plan and then tell the city what to do, is that it?
Well, not our committee. We won't be going directly to the state. The city staff could make that move, but not us.
So you want it to come from the state to the city and not the city to the state, is that what I'm?
What we're down saying is
Our committee-
we would recommend something to council, assuming that we would then recommend, yeah, we think it's a good idea, then I would say Henry would go to the person at Delbot and say, hey, could you do a study? We're interested in having a study done. Is that sort of the path you were thinking down?
No, he thinks go right to the state.
No, I'm not. I think that might be a study may be the next, I guess, the next move. But I think that has to be a, like, we have to make a recommendation to mayor and council. Our committee has to make a recommendation to mayor and council for that study to be completed and to incorporate the parking challenges on the beach. Would a committee member want to make, formulate a recommendation to mayor and council? With that in mind,
Okay, I would like,
whether that piggybacks on what Andrew was saying with the parking committees, the parking issues, do you sort of formulate?
I'm trying.
Bob, do you have anything to offer? I think you might have made the motion last time.
I don't think he hears us.
He might not have heard you, Andrew. You want to?
Bob, can you hear us?
Yeah, certainly.
Did you hear the conversation about?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. You have any input about it?
What I would recommend, what I would like to see is I think it's the function of this committee, of course, only to approach the city. Going directly to the state is out of our purview. Our position, our thoughts, my thoughts would be this committee should ask the city through mayor and council to approach the state and see if the state is willing to investigate the 12-foot right-of-ways, which, as Mr. Carter said, and you have been saying, Don, there's plenty of room for parking, a bike lane, and 2 lanes of traffic. I think that should at least be investigated. Now, when it would get to the city council, I would expect that the city council would then approach the parking committee to bring them into the discussion before the council made any decisions about whether they were even going to approach DelDOT. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So are we in consensus to let this ride for now and discuss it at the next meeting, or do we want to make a recommendation today of some kind to mayor and council?
I think we should make a recommendation.
And be around the idea of a study that would look at the right-of-way issue. How could we put in 2 bike lanes along Cedar Avenue?
Well, just make it where they incorporate a bike lane in their parking. If they're
Well, the
gonna rent a
parking issue
parking
isn't a
stuff.
DelDOT issue, that's a city issue. DelDOT's not concerned about the parking issue along Cedar Avenue.
We want the city to incorporate a bike lane within the parking, right? In other words, it's gonna
No,
be.
the bike lane is present, it's there, there's shoulders that would provide safe cycling. The parking issue is something else. That's.
Well, we don't want them to park diagonally, we want them to park parallel, right?
Yeah.
So,
But now, because of encroachment, people are parking with two tires on the pavement, on the shoulder, and 2 off the pavement.
right.
And that's obscuring the bike lanes.
Did I understand, is the city has a plan, or they're working on a plan for the parking on Cedar?
That's the thing, is so that's why if they come back, let's say the staff comes back and says, oh, diagonal parking is the way to go because we can fit more, that's their recommendation, then it doesn't fit with, that's why, to your point, there needs to be a coordination there of that this is a desire. So probably the best action is that. This is, if you think this is something that needs to be considered as they consider how parking is laid out down there, then
Consider adding a bike lane, Like I said, the city has to want it before it's gonna approach the state for it, right?
Well, this committee opposes any kind of diagonal parking on Cedar Street.
So want to make a resolution for
Are we
that.
consensus of that? We oppose diagonal parking? Ever ridden your bike down Rehoboth Avenue? where are we? Are we
So we're gonna send a resolution or we're not gonna send? a
recommendation to mayor and council?
We'll make the recommendation about adding a bike lanes to Cedar.
Would you like to formulate that into a sentence and we can move forward?
In the form of a motion.
A motion, yeah.
I motion that the city look into the feasibility of bike paths on Cedar when they look into the parking on Cedar. And you want to make a recommendation about parking should be parallel and not diagonal?
Mhm.
So does someone second my motion? Or-
I second that.
And I make a motion that parking on Cedar should be parallel and not diagonal.
I second that.
Thank you. Thank you, John. All right, let's move on. We also discussed the whole business of last meeting about crosswalk signage. Janet's going to try to pull.
Was there a second and was there a vote?
Make a comment, or I have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me back up a minute.
I think you had a first, I think you had a motion and a second, but I
Yeah, we
think,
did, but I'm sorry.
yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. Thank you, Andrew.
I just asked a question. I know.
Absolutely.
One of the things, you guys, are you as involved with bicycling as you are with pedestrian safety?
Yes.
Okay. We had a traffic safety committee, and one of the issues that we didn't get to before the changing council was the crosswalk at Second and Savannah Road. That is a really dangerous crosswalk at night, and what we looked into was some additional lighting. I know I personally damn near hit a woman, and if it wasn't for my wife, I would have hit her in the crosswalk one evening. It's just not very well lit.
Mhm.
And I know Robert Kennedy had the same experience, and he's the one that brought it to our attention. I'd just like to throw out that you might consider that as an agenda item and sometime in the near future.
Well, at least we had the silent policeman there.
Yeah,
That
but that's,
intersection.
but when you're driving down there at night and at after dark, if people don't have on light clothing, and most people don't wear light clothing in the evening, they're very susceptible to being hit. And I'm really shocked that someone hasn't been.
And one of the problems is the utility pole right at the crosswalk.
That is
There's
the
a light
problem.
behind They have all the poles right at the crosswalk and you stand behind the pole coming out of the pole.
I'm with you, Dennis. It's very
There's a
dangerous.
light on that pole at the corner, right outside of the buttery. But I think they need a light down lower. And we had a guy, I talked to Preston Shell when they were talking about the lighting out there at the Senior Living Center. And he gave me the name of the guy, and I got it written down at home. And we had him out here, and he did some studies. He was going to make some recommendations, but we never got to it. And I can provide that to you. Andrew, I'll give it to you, or Chip, I'll get it to you guys. But I just like to throw that out there for your
That's a great
consideration.
point. Yeah, thank you. I think I've had that experience too. I've almost been hit there at night.
Yeah.
Walking across.
A lot of the crosswalks on Second Street are very dangerous.
Particularly that one on Savannah, because when you're coming towards the canal, if you've got a car there on the left, you can't see a darn thing anyway.
Exactly.
Even in the daytime, it's very difficult. I mean, I almost stop when I come to that when I'm driving myself, but that's only my personal thing.
I mean, I walk on Second Street a lot and I cross Second Street a lot. And cars don't stop for you in the crosswalk. It's like a 50-50 shot of whether somebody will actually slow down and stop for you.
I don't think very many people use the crosswalks across Second Street either.
A lot of them just run across with his empty.
Oh, yeah,
It's like
they
an
walk
opportunity
across
cross.
there.
They run across now because no.
I think that occurs a lot. to folks.
Okay, I won't hold up your time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great play, Dennis.
Thank you.
No, no, go. You got it? Okay.
I think I'm good.
Okay. Janet's gonna pull up
Yeah, I am.
the file
Let me see.
just to revisit what these examples of crosswalk signs. So here we go. Thank you, Janet.
Okay,
Thanks, Janet.
got through that one.
We discussed this at the last meeting. Did we make a recommendation?
Yeah, we wanted silent policemen at the crosswalks on Second Street. To add silent policemen.
I think I voted yes for that.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, John made a motion. We we picked or chosen 4 locations for these crosswalk signs. I believe one was at BB Hospital Crossing, in Savannah at BB Avenue, Lewes Georgetown Rail Trail Crossing at Kings, just west of the library, Savannah Road at American Legion Road. We looked at 5 locations actually, and also Kings Highway and Adams Avenue. Oh, so here's the 5th one, Lloyd's IGA on Savannah as well. These are all locations. What action needs to be taken now by the city is to write up a right-of-way agreement, or to actually use the standard right-of-way agreement that DelDOT provided that would allow us to buy these crosswalk signs and place them in the right-of-way. We've had other ones that have disappeared. I'm not sure if they were destroyed by trucks. You know, another one on Front Street, I think, was constantly being hit by Cisco trucks and maybe had been destroyed. I don't know if there's, Janet, would you be able to look into if the city has anything in their lots, old signage like this, the silent policeman? And you know what I'm talking about. You've seen the one on 2nd Street on Savannah Road.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the only one I think that remains.
I wonder if I have some more of those.
These are these what you consider the silent policeman, this
Yes.
example? I was thinking that was a different type of sign for some reason, but okay.
He sits right in the road.
Right, yeah, I'm aware of that.
Travel.
Right.
They're like on heavy rubber buttons
Yes,
and.
yes, I was thinking that what used to be at the corner or the intersection of Savannah and 2nd
It's a
was,
silent policeman now.
that was like a silhouette of a policeman or something, wasn't it?
Maybe the old ones were.
Right,
Yeah, maybe that's how they got the names of silent policemen.
okay,
But we're trying to be politically correct now, so we're calling these also signage.
okay.
Where are the other ones located?
There was one on Front Street at Market Street.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there were any other ones in town.
Okay.
But that
I'll
was-
see if
that
there's
one-
anything down in maintenance.
Okay. And this may be something we can include in our next year's fiscal budget. So,
Andrew, correct me, please, but I thought we took this up in council and we approved it.
Yeah, we did.
And we authorized purchase of the material and also the installation.
the only thing we're waiting for is a right-of-way agreement from Anne Marie with DelDOT. Has to be a contract with DelDOT before they can be placed there.
And is that, help me understand this so that I can be more effective here.
Shared
It's-
jurisdiction.
Is that agreement, would this require 5 different agreements to be executed, one for each location? Or is it a broad citywide agreement that we're looking to put in place?
I'll have to look up the document.
That would be helpful because I don't recall that being described as a requirement.
Well, it's a state road, don't you have to?
I understand, but what I'm suggesting is that
One
since we've
MSA
already had
versus-
silent policemen in the city, if there's a standing agreement, that might allow us just to
So the
simply.
original agreement is a blanket agreement.
That's what I'm asking.
No, what I remember is that their engineers will have to look at each placement to see if the turning radius and the turn lanes or whatever that might be involved would still allow traffic to flow. So I believe there's going to be individual.
So there has to be a study done in effect.
No study, just someone to come out and look at the location.
Yeah, well, I'm going to call that a study. All right,
Thank you. Let's move on to new business. Outreach, we've had really no opportunities because of COVID to do outreach this year. And I put this on the agenda because I wanted to get some feedback from the committee members on how you feel moving forward. You know, this fall, possibly doing the, bike event, bike bell pop-up event like we did a couple of years ago, where we just installed bike bells on bikes at the Lewes Library Trailhead. Real successful. People were real excited. It's a way for folks to communicate better on the trails, for cyclists to communicate better. I think we installed about 50. Bob was there. That's right. Bob and Ted were there that day.
We do that on a weekend?
We did it on Labor Day, I think, in 2019, I want to say.
You just said this fall, you're gonna do
I'm
it.
saying this fall, would this be an event the committee would be interested in doing? Or some other type of outreach event, maybe the farmer's market or, that type of thing.
I think that is a good idea.
Okay.
Yep.
You all are feeling comfortable, you've all been vaccinated, you feel comfortable being around people that possibly may not have been vaccinated? Because that's, okay.
Well, we have a sign, you want a bell, wear a mask, you know? Free bell with proof of vaccination. Huh?
There you go.
Okay.
I have a question. Have you ever had an event that or is there an organization that handles sort of repurposed bikes? Because I know with kids, my kids have been going out of the bike like every couple of years. Are there opportunities for that?
I've been asked that question twice this week. There are two options. Locally, there's the bike barn at Cape and Lipton State Park.
They'll take
Some
them.
bikes that are in 2 district here. And then I've taken bikes and bike parks up to the Urban Bike Project in Newark and Wilmington. They provide training to kids on how to repair bikes, fix a flat, and they also provide bikes to kids that can't afford them.
Yeah, I gave a bike last year to that kid. And I had asked about,
That's right, yeah.
I'd asked about that, is like, if there's any poor kids in Lewes, and I mean, there's not many poor people in Lewes, but anybody who needed bikes, they wanted to give bikes to come up with some
I was
process.
thinking maybe something at Jefferson's apartment or something like that, where we could have an event there and hand out bikes, something like that.
Well, that Lewis Night Out would be a good spot to set up something.
Yeah. Yeah, the one that was held like in August.
Yeah, so an event like that, because a lot of local town people go to that event.
Yeah.
You know, the fire department.
Yes, Jonathan, Officer Moyer, do you know where the police department obtains the bicycles that are provided as giveaways?
So Walmart has a program that they usually donate pallets of stuff that they don't use. And there's I think Lewes Fire Company's involved, Laurel PD's involved. So we usually reach out to them and get hold of the bikes through them.
Okay, and they're new bikes.
Yeah, they're brand new.
Officer Moore, are you able to speak to what happens to the bikes that you recover as,
Stolen property.
Yeah, like stolen property, things like that? Because at one point you guys had a pretty decent collection, I think, down the basement.
So we used to, back when that knick-knack shop where the new brewery's going.
Right, okay.
At that shop, he would come and get them. That's been a couple of years. I think the last go around, we wound up, most of them were pretty beat bikes, so we wound up throwing them away. There's a couple of organizations. There's one down in not Chesapeake City, Cambridge. I can't remember the name, but they take the bikes and they actually ship them overseas to Africa. I can't remember the name of the organization, but I can find out for you. But yeah, I mean, the last group bikes I think we threw away, but before that we had that the guy that had the knick-knack shop come in and rebuild them.
Yep, the Boys and Girls Club of Rehoboth, because when I was with the Historical Society, we let one of their group build a boat. And they came, they sent over a bunch of kids to work on the boat, mostly underprivileged children. Yeah.
All right, well, that's definitely something we could look into and get more information on how we could have more of a local program for that. I know last year, John donated a bike to a young boy that helped us at the, Lupin for the Library event. He was a volunteer that day doing community service, and we ended up giving him a bicycle a few weeks later.
Well, Ted bought him a lot of tickets to win a bike and he didn't win, remember?
That's right.
Like you bought him $100 in tickets and he didn't win.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the last item of new business, crosswalks at 4th Street intersections from Ocean View to New Road. This was brought to our attention, and I travel that route a lot. I never really realized there were no crosswalks along there. Had not noticed that. So it's all within city limits. There's a lot of folks that live full-time in those neighborhoods and that walk their dogs along those routes. So I think this is an important consideration. This, again, this is a city road, so this would not require DelDOT's involvement. So it may reduce that one step in the time. Do I hear a recommendation from the committee to make a request to mayor and council on this issue?
I make a recommendation that we, to mayor and city council, that we install crosswalks at Full Street intersections from Ocean View to New Road.
Is there a second?
Second.
And vote. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Carrie, and any other comments? I don't know what was the outcome of the outreach question. Are we all interested in doing outreach?
Sure.
Okay.
When though?
Somewhat enthused, but not so.
You know, do you have a date for the bell?
No, I don't.
But you have to publish that somewhere so people.
No, it's a pop-up event. They just show up. Yeah.
Well, you know, this weekend would be a good weekend because you have the craft fair.
Yeah.
At the Historic Society, so it's a beautiful weekend and there's lots of things going on.
Coast Day this weekend or next? It's this weekend.
It's this weekend. Well, Coast Day is virtual this year.
Oh, is it?
I'm not around this weekend, but if you guys want to do it, the bells are up in the attic. So, and the banner's up there too, so. But we can choose a weekend later in the month.
I mean, I could make it this Saturday if somebody else wants to come too, set up.
I'll check on that for you. I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know, because what time we do it usually? Was there a time range we do it like?
Anytime you want, any length of time you want.
And where would you be doing this, please?
That's over by the library parking lot, right? By the trailhead, by the.
Okay, so the trailhead.
Yeah, we pulled up last time, I pulled my pickup up, we put the banner on the side of the pickup truck, just to sort
I
of
don't have a pickup truck, so I don't know if we hang the banner somewhere.
on the side of your car, or whatever, on the side of the building. To promote the committee in the town. But yeah, you guys, if you guys want to jump on that, all you need is a Phillips screwdriver. Communicate the point about communication on the bike trail and the importance of communicating when passing. The bells is a great way to do that, as well as a verbal type of a warning as well. Not when you're right next to the person, but as you're approaching the person, so. Yeah, you guys want to do it, if you, that's great. If not, we can set a date for later in the month.
I mean, I could be available Saturday.
I'll have to just check on one thing. I'll let you know for sure.
Just what's the time range? Do you have any idea what would be a good time range for you?
8 or 9 o'clock, so a couple hours. I mean, I'm up early, so.
I'm up early too, but I mean, you want people on the bike
Oh,
path.
on a Saturday?
Like, so you say start at 9, like 9 to 12 or something like that.
I would-
Break it down.
That's the time to get out there on the weekend.
Well, the really early people are avid bikers, so
Sure.
they tend to have
Yep.
all that stuff.
All the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
We attempted to install the bells as opposed to handing them out, because that allowed us to engage with the cyclists more. But some folks will just say, oh, I just want to grab it and go kind of thing. So you can use your judgment on how you do that. We have, the bells were donated by Lewes Cycle Sports and Trek Bicycles, and then we purchased a few of the bells as well.
How many bells do we have? You have any idea?
200 or 300.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's this style.
We don't want to give them all out Saturday, right?
No, you don't. Yeah. There's this style and there's a less expensive style as well. It's up there. So you can decide.
But that is for sure that you're gonna be doing it, or you're gonna still check with?
I just need to check. I just
Okay.
need to check on one thing.
Right.
Bob, are you around Saturday?
Should be. Tell me what time you come up with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll know by tomorrow, you think?
I'm going to go home as long as I work, so.
Just email me when you go.
Would you also let me know if you're gonna be doing that on?
Yes.
If you could by email or phone call, whatever.
Okay. Yes, yeah,
Thank you.
We should let city staff know and the mayor know too. You know where they are in the attic. You know, I think the city hall is open from 9 to 5, 9 to 4?
8 to 4.
8 to 4, okay.
I'm good.
On Saturday.
Yeah.
No, not on Saturday,
Yeah.
Friday.
Yeah, they pick them up Friday.
Friday.
Pick them up Friday. Yeah, we can go up and get them. I saw them up there.
You want me to pick them up in the car or you biked everywhere, right? So.
Yeah, I'd read back some, and if I can't make it and you and Bob can do it, I'll just have them in my garage.
Okay.
That way, I keep them everything with the maps.
All right, great.
Don, one thing I know it's not on the agenda, but it's just something, it's an observance of mine, and we need to talk about it in a future meeting, but I just want to bring it up. The evolution of the e-bike is going beyond.
Yeah.
They are everywhere. Pedigo, they cannot believe the business that they're doing since they opened. Not just in sales, but in rentals. It's phenomenal.
I had a citizen bring up the same thing, Coach. So, yeah, we should probably get that on a future agenda for sure.
We have had it on past agendas. We provided a definition, the DELDOT definition, or the state definition of an e-bike. Which is a 750 watt, 20 mile per hour limit on speed. But some of these that I've encountered are going much faster than that. So I know that the Lewes Georgetown Rail Trail is under several different jurisdictions: City of Lewes, the Parks Department, DELDOT, State Police. I believe there's not enough enforcement out there. I was on one of the single track trails in the park and came almost into a head-on collision with someone riding faster than normally would be riding on a normal bike. Had to go off the trail to avoid a collision. So it is an issue, and I think we could continue discussing it maybe at a future meeting. I'll add that to the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Next meeting is November 16th.
At 6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock.
Second Street's still an issue.
Okay.
I see it too.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's usually adults.
And Jackie.
And the other one is still adults riding